One of the things I learned in my time in education, especially in the classroom, and even as an administrator, I learned to listen before I made decisions. And I wanted to see where the children were coming from and what they needed. And as you talk to them more and more, is because you build a relationship, I realized they need something different. And so the kids informed my decisions a lot of times on what we was doing and how we pivoted. I realized that there's a need across the board for this particular group of kids. Like, no matter whether you're in a traditional city school, public school, if you're in a rural county school, if you're in a suburban school, there's this same pocket of kids. They look different, they may say things differently, but it's the same core things that they need, and they're still not being met.
That's the voice of Dr. Ahmed White, founder and CEO of the Rock Academy, an innovative opportunity public charter high school serving students in grades 9 through 12 across Nashville. Dr. White has 20 plus years experience in teaching and school leadership, and the Rock is his dream school. Opening in 2026, Dr. White's mission for the Rock is to re-engage disconnected youth. These are students who are considered at risk by our community, which might be students who are chronically absent, in foster care, or who've been involved in the justice system, to ensure that these students have a school where they feel like they can belong and are set up for postgraduate success. My name is Scott Campbell, and I'm the Executive Director of the Nashville Incubator, and you're listening to Back to the Whiteboard, a podcast featuring conversations with innovative leaders in the education reform space. You can learn more about the Nashville Incubator and get involved at tnincubator.org. Excited to be here today with Ahmed White, Executive Director of The Rock. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump right into it. And what I'm trying to figure out and understand is kind of innovation within education, the public sector. So I'm just curious. I think all innovation starts with a problem and saying, hey, I see something that we need to fix and wanting to solve it. So I'm curious, what is the problem you're trying to solve with opening up The Rock?
The problem I'm trying to solve is, I think that in the educational spaces across the country, we see it, is that students that are considered to be at risk, which I don't like that term because it's so negative, but when you look at students that are considered to be at risk, there's not much that can be done. No, there's a lot that can be done. There's not much that's being done at all levels. And so having the purview of understanding superintendency and having the ear of superintendents across the country has helped me understand that this is an area that we don't do as well with. And I understand why. It's not because someone is purposely neglecting or ignoring this group of students. It's harder to move those students when you're trying to run a district or you're trying to run a network. And so one of the reasons I want to open up The Rock is I can pivot and do the things that's necessary because I'm building the school just for those students.
Yeah, and talk to me about who are those students, right? Like, who are you most passionate about serving, and who is The Rock going to serve?
This version of The Rock would be our chronically absent students, those that are experiencing foster care, DCS involved. And the reason why that's important to me, I spent probably about 18 months going to juvenile courts, truancy court, talking to educators across the country and realizing that if we can get kids in school, there's a less likelihood of them getting into trouble outside of school. And so our current target would be the students that right now are sitting at chronically absent. And that's across the board, whether it's traditional or charter.
Yeah. So I guess I want to understand how you got to this problem. Why are you passionate about serving this student population?
Because, when you start thinking about the kids that you miss, or the kids that you've not done the best with over time, and I'm not talking about you personally maybe, but also as a system, you realize these children need something different. And for me, on a personal level, I have 4 sons, and I don't hide it. I don't also use it as a badge of honor, but all of my sons came out of foster care. And when I look at what my sons needed, they needed something different. They needed something unique to meet them where they were. And my oldest, when I adopted him, he was 14 years old. and knowing what he needed from education as compared to what my 10-year-old needs. We're different. And so when I started thinking about rock and we're starting to open up with ninth grade, I think that's around the time when I got my oldest son and I put him in one of my schools and had him in what we consider one of the top schools. And I saw where it wasn't meeting his needs. It didn't meet him where he was. And I think that we have this philosophy that is college or bust. And I think that harms a lot of children. And so for me, it's deeply personal to see what's needed. And that goes all the way back to my childhood. But definitely as a father, like, kids need something different. They need to know things are relevant. And then also I was a special education teacher in a self-contained classroom in the high school level. So you can think about overage, undercredited students. I work with them all the time. I know that they needed something different and they didn't fit into the regular, flow of a school. But we gave them something different, and I saw them become successful. And a lot of those students now are doing great things or doing good things. And I would like to say that we had something to do with that, just because we took the time to tailor-make education for them.
And you started off as a special educator. You've been administrator in multiple different schools over time. I mean, just tell me a little bit more about how some of those experiences have sort of shaped your understanding of this particular problem.
So I originally started in education as an ISS teacher.
There you go.
And like in the the late 90s.
Yeah.
And then from there went into Monroe Harding Children's Home, Genesis Academy, one of our traditional high schools. And what I saw in that time frame is just what we were doing, or what I was trying to do as a teacher was failing kids. I was trying to give them everything that they needed and push them towards the academic, content, knowledge, all the wonderful things that we do for students. And I was pushing them in that direction, and I saw the pushback. And it wasn't a disrespectful pushback, because they respected me greatly because I was there and the relationships that we built. But I think I got a chance to really understand, like, the need was different, and it helped me shape my view. I come from a place where if I love this kid enough, if I, as transparent as I can be, they'll figure it out and they'll make it. Well, it's not like that. You have to hear the children from where they are. And one of the things I learned in my time in education, especially in the classroom, and even as an administrator, I learned to listen before I made decisions. And I wanted to see where the children were coming from and what they needed. And as you talk to them more and more, it's because you build a relationship, I realized they need something different. And so the kids informed my decisions a lot of times on what we was doing and how we pivoted. And then as an administrator, being in both rural, suburban, and then urban settings, I realized that there's a need across the board for this particular group of kids. Like, no matter whether you're in a traditional city school, public school, if you're in a rural county school, if you're in a suburban school, there's this same pocket of kids. They look different. They may say things differently, but it's the same core things that they need, and they're still not being met. And so one of the things I've tried to do in my last position was, how do I pivot and meet the needs of the kids as compared to run the traditional play? And as I've grown as an educator, I've grown as a parent, I realized, like, the voices of these young people matter. And so as we're developing Rock Academy, and as I did my study on Rock Academy students, I wanted to hear their voice. And that's why we did the surveys and the focus groups and all the things that we've done, because I really need to hear that. But also, I'm banking on my experiences and hearing the voices of the children that were in my classes or that were in one of my schools, and knowing that those kids slipped through the cracks, and knowing that, like, I developed things in a traditional public school setting that could help a certain amount of kids. But this way, I think, like, what the Rock is going to be so different is we're building it with those kids in mind. Yep. Like, this is the kid that we want, as compared to, as we say, the wonderful, no problem, good home, college focused child. No, I want the child that doesn't even know that colleges exist, or if they do, they think it's, so far away from that they can't reach it. But also, I want kids to be able to have developed the agency and the ability to say, this is the future I want for myself. And so we're building things in place, whether through our wraparound services, whether through our mentoring program, that help kids really make the decision on their own on where they go. I think a lot of times the kids that I'm focused on, they live out the lives that's been chosen for them. Your mom grew up here. Your dad grew up here. You're going to grow up here. And I think that, and you're going to raise your children here. And I think that that's just wrong. I live in Tennessee, right? And I'm from upstate New York. I had the ability to make that decision on where I want to be in life because of the skills I was given, both in school and at home. And so why can't we provide that for other children?
Thanks. You've clearly devoted your whole career to serving kids in the margins, right? That not the middle of the road. Like a lot of times we focus our education just to serve the middle, right? Mm-hmm. You found that niche in the system to be able to serve those students who need it the most. So let's dig in. You sort of just started to touch on a few things, but I guess I want to know what's going to be different about the Rock. Like, how are you going to serve those students? What's going to be innovative about this model and the approach that you take towards it?
Yeah, I think that what makes us innovative is really what makes us simple, right? We're going back to some very basic principles and making sure that, students have a sense of belonging. That's from day one. So, like, how do we onboard students into a school? How do we build that aspect of team? How do we build that aspect of really figuring out your needs and setting an opportunity for you to get there? But also, we're not going to be, everyone loves to say CTE is the pathway, and we don't see it that way at Rock Academy. We see it as more of a, we want to give kids 4 opportunities. One, to be, a caring opportunity where you look at some of the caring professions or caring opportunities out there where they can, see, okay, this is how I can be useful to society in this way. Then we look at creativity. We have some of the most creative students in the world, and they come to us and they're boxed into one level of thinking, but let's find some creative solutions or creative careers that they can be a part of and say, okay, this is something I want to do, like culinary arts. How does this changing things? Like, how do I create in these spaces? And then, of course, we have the technical, and you start looking at, programming or coding or, whatever those areas are. And then we talk about trade. And so therefore you have like your welding and construction, things of that nature. And what reason why that we see that as being innovative, because what we see is a lot of kids, okay, you are in this alternative setting, and we're a CTE school, so for the rest of your life you're going to be a welder. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to make you the best welder ever. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what that child wants.
But funneling students towards this is the only pathway that you can
take.
And
I think that we've done I think sometimes what we do in the alternative space is we track students into where they need to be. And again, that's us making those decisions. We are going to give our kids from day one the options to choose those. They're going to explore all those pathways, the different, the CCTTs. They're going to explore that. And then they're going to get a chance to go through it again and decide, okay, what really sits with me? What resonates with me? What is my path that I want to choose? But then have the ability to say, okay, well, I thought it was this way. And now I have the experience through, workforce development or internship or whatever that is to experience that. Now, when they leave our school, we want them to be able to say, okay, I have a certificate for this, I have a diploma, and now the world is my oyster, if you will. Mm-hmm. And how do I take that on? So what makes it innovative is, we have that, but also just simple things. When I say that we took it back very simple, like our start time. We're not starting at 7 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, that doesn't work.
Kids don't learn at 7 o'clock in the morning.
They don't do as well at 7 o'clock. I don't know if adults learn at 7 o'clock in the morning. And so, how we start our day, the implementation of mentors that will follow our students. Why is that important to me? Well, that mentor in our school is going to know that child inside and out. They're going to know why you're not in school, how you show up at school, and all those different things. And they'll have an assigned person that's there. Like, we look at traditional schools, you have your guidance counselor. We go there, we're going to get you ready for X, Y, and Z. And that works. That's fine. But I think that what we're looking at is like, how do we take that mentor and make them the key to that space and help them get to those things that they need. So we have the CTE, you have your mentor, but then the next part that I'm really excited about and I leaned in on is how do we now take all of those things that you need, that you run against, and we remove barriers. Because like a lot of people think that, schools are, you have a robust wraparound services. That's just going to change the world for the child. No, you still need high quality education. Mm-hmm. But the only way I can get you to that is if I remove all the barriers. And so we see our wraparound services as a way just to remove barriers for students. And so you have housing insecurities. We'll have a partnership, to help, hopefully get you into a space, or laundry service, or food, because a lot of our kids that we're going to serve live in food deserts. Mm-hmm. So what does our pantry look like? What are the things that we have, where we can help our students really meet those needs? But then there's other versions of things that we can do. And when I was at my previous school, we met the needs of the families and the kids, but we also looked at, okay, do we need GED services? Do we need ESL services?
Yep.
Like, really get down to meeting the needs of the community. And I think that's the next part which makes us innovative, is we have made the decisions that we've made thus far based on input from the community. That 18 months that I spent in juvenile courts and truancy court, the surveys, the focus groups, that has helped us make those decisions. And what I love about being in the space of Rock Academy or the charter sphere is I can pivot based off of those needs. And that's one of the things we did at my previous school, which was a charter. We were able to pivot to meet the needs of the families and the kids that we serve, as compared to we have to go in this direction. And I think that it's very difficult sometimes at the district level, because if you think of the district, and somebody said this to me the other night and it just resonated with me so well, the district is like a ship and it's going. But to make a turn, you have to make that decision way down the line, and it takes time. Mm-hmm. In the charter world, it's more like a sailboat. I can pivot as I need to and change, with a little move here or there and get to where we need to. And I think that's what makes our school so unique, is like when we talk about creativity and some, our partnership with Craftways Kitchen, it's designed for the students that we are trying to serve. And then when you look at, our partnership with TCAT Nashville, it's designed to be another opportunity for the students that we will serve. So it's exposing them to something different. But both ways that you can look at it, both of those partnerships help those students say, okay, I've got this over here, I've got that. And now I can make some decisions and really get my hands on things. And so I think that's what makes us different. In some ways, because we pivot, and I'm not saying I know what you need. I'm saying, what do you need? And this is what I can provide, and this is what I can. Sometimes, in our spaces that I've dealt with, our students are like, oh, I want to be it's like the kids say, I want to be a basketball player. Well, you only know how to dribble with your left hand, so we got to work on these things. Or, you just don't have it. But just trying to find ways to help.
That's so great. And it's clear that driving this model is community input, community perspective, really understanding the needs of this specific community in Nashville. At the same time, you probably have gotten inspiration from different models that exist in other cities, in other whether they be schools or nonprofits that are doing really good work in this space to serve some of those highest need students. So I'm curious, like, who's doing something innovative already that is inspiring you in this space that you're trying to think, we could do something like that, or I can take from those models?
So one of the first schools I went to see was in Idaho. It's called Elevate. Mm-hmm. Their CTE, work alternative type school, working with some really wonderful children, and that was very inspirational. Just when I went out to see them, saw a couple schools in New York City, Judith SK, Urban Dove, Lead. Just looked at some of the things that they're doing, working with kids in these spaces, and not only looking at what's going on with the program models that they're doing, but also looking at the challenges that they face, and then looking at, okay, that's great in New York City, that's great in Idaho, but how will that work in Tennessee?
Yep.
And so it's difficult, and it makes me look at, what things we need to do or what things we can do to really meet the needs of the students, and what I need to be able to advocate for our school to be successful.
Yeah. Talking about like kind of personal inspiration around this, who or what book has really sort of inspired your theory of action when it comes to education and how your pedagogy for students?
The reality is, I'm a person that's driven by what I see, and I think that for me, this is deeply personal, and it drives me, is my father. If that makes sense. That's the book I've read all my life. And I look at my dad, who's now 79, and I look at, for lack of a better term, what the educational system took from him, and what family and society took from him. And I don't say that as in a victim mentality. I think that that's maybe where he sits at times, or has sat at points in times. I don't look at as victim mentality, but more so of neglected or malpractice, or educational malpractice. That's more of what I'm looking at. And so personally, looking at a father that, struggled in school and eventually had to drop out due to just the system that was there, that did not see a young man, but saw a body, didn't see him as a person, but saw him as just, another number. And I think that for me, what drives me is knowing that my dad couldn't read when I was a kid, or read very well. I remember going to, the bank and writing checks out to make sure that he can get cash. And here it is, he's the smartest man I know to this day. And at that point in time in his life, he couldn't read. And I remember as he developed that skill to read and do all the things, my dad had his own business. He's done amazing things. But the hurt that when you talk about school that he carries to this day is what drives me. I tell people the reason why I became a principal, when I first became a principal, I said the reason why I wanted to be a principal because I didn't want to beat kids. Because my dad was literally beaten by a principal when he was a child, to the point that it brings tears to his eyes when he thinks about it now. And I just think that is what sometimes we do, is we beat kids. And we beat them out of a wonderful education. We beat them out of opportunities. We beat them out of imagination, because we want to fit these, square pegs into round holes. And when they don't fit in, then we other them. We do so many different things, knowingly or unknowingly, right? And so what drives me personally is, like, I don't want another kid to feel what my father has felt for 79 years of his life.
Thank you. I guess if you were to paint a picture of the perfect day in the Rock Academy, walking around, and I'm walking right beside you, what would we see? What will your school look like when it opens in a year and a half from now?
In a perfect day, you will see kids, young people working, taking charge of you'll see kids taking charge of their life, working hard, fully being responsible. And you won't be able to tell that child that's in my school from a child that's in the #1 school in the state. I would love to be able to walk with you down that hall and say, and you say, man, that's a wonderful young man. And I can tell you his story and you not believe it, just by the transformation that will happen to those students when they're at Rock Academy. I want to be able to, I don't want our kids to be able to be picked out of a lineup. I want them to be like not blend in, but more so stand out in a way that you wouldn't believe that this is where they come from. If I told you, again, I go back to my father. If I told you my dad was a business owner, if I told you that, he's done these different things in the community, you wouldn't have known that he was a young man that couldn't read, that dropped out of school. If I tell you about my best friend growing up, and I said he's, school superintendent, and he's doing all these things, you wouldn't know that he also at one point dropped out of school, had a hard life, parents had issues, things of that nature. You wouldn't know it. But I want that to be the story when you're walking down the hall of the Rock, that I can point out so many kids that you wouldn't know where they come from. And even some of the students that I had in my classroom, like if you walked in my classroom when I was in a local high school, people didn't know that it was a special ed class. They just thought it was a regular class where actually kids were requesting to be in my class. And I was like, I don't care. You come in and actually, they blended very well. And I think that was I think that's what's going to make Rock different. People think about just a typical schools. You got kids doing wonderful things that are acting out. And I think when you see at the Rock, that kid that may have acted out on day 1, day 180, that's not going to be the same child.
It's a good word. You're in the process of applying to become the first opportunity charter school in the state of Tennessee, which is serving, as you described, an opportunity school. It could mean lots of things, but it's serving some of these students who are at risk or the highest need kind of in our community. You also alluded right at the beginning that the first version of the Rock is, and then you went on to sort of describe what this school that you're going to open. What's your big picture here? What's the big vision here around the work that you're doing?
I believe there are other versions of the Rock that are necessary to really be an asset to the district or whatever area that we're in, to the city, to the state, or to wherever we go. And the reason why I say that is this is a need that we know that's right now, but there are other needs that we see. But we can't be all things to all people, especially at this point in time when you have new legislation. We're all trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure out performance and accountability. And so we know that this is a lift that, is already tough enough. But then, I have versions of the Rock in my head that will, deal with those kids that were, emotionally disturbed or overage undercredited or whatever that need is, and finding ways to serve those students. It could be, everything's on the table from residential to whatever is there. I think as the need goes and as we see the need and identify it, then we'll fill that need. I think it's one of my favorite little movies was I think it was iRobot or Robot. No, not iRobot. Robots.
Yeah.
And it's like see a need, fill a need. And I think what the Rock seeks to do is see the needs and fill them as best we can, and whatever that looks like. So if it's helping with tutoring or it's helping with juvenile justice, or if we're providing those educational opportunities for kids that are coming out of the juvenile courts, then let's really get down to the brass tacks and make that happen.
From the first time I met you, I knew that's the type of man you were. See a need, fill a need. So thank you for filling this need in this community. And I can't wait to walk down the hallways with you. So if people want to find out more or get in touch with you, how can they find out more about The Rock?
First, you can check our website at therockacademynashville.org. You can email me personally at aWhite@therockacademynashville.org, or you can go to our helpline, help@therockacademynashville.org. And those are the best ways to reach us. And, between myself and my team, will know us or, respond and do all the things we can. And then you can follow us on our social media, both at Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. So we're there, and you can keep up with our events and the things that we're doing. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. Thanks for spending time with me today. Thank you for what you're doing for families in this community, and thanks for being an innovator and being willing to fill a really, really important need.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thanks for listening to Back to the Whiteboard, powered by the Nashville Incubator. Learn how you can get involved in helping us reform education at tnincubator.org. And if you like this episode, please follow, rate, and review this show wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.